Hello, Pokesports fans, and welcome to Pokesports, a competitive Pokemon podcast. I am one of your hosts, Mike, and I play with one Pokemon on the field.
I'm Kevin, your other host, and I have a new microphone.
Ah, look at that. How good do you feel about that, by the way?
Oh, dude, I love it so much.
And how poor are you now?
Oh, I don't want to talk about it.
Okay,
I use
fair.
PayPal credit. But no, I'm super happy with this purchase just because, an improvement to the podcast, improvement to everybody's ears. Clearly, Mike sounded a lot better than me this whole time. I'm sure you guys noticed. So hopefully we fix that now. You should equally sound beautiful.
You sound just as beautiful as you always have. Kevin, welcome back from vacation. It has been a full 2 weeks since we've been sitting here live. For those of you who were here last week, you'll know that that one was a pre-recorded episode that Kevin was so gracious to be sitting in the comments for while I was kind of sitting there and just kind of chatting with you guys.
I told you I would make it, Mike.
You did. You really pulled through.
You and everybody.
You really pulled through. How was your vacation?
It was good. It was really relaxing, obviously. I got to go zip lining. I got to swim in a cave. There were bats above my head. It was an experience. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, I went to like this amusement park. It's kind of like Six Flags, but it's called Explore Fuego. Yeah, it's like a bunch of zip lines. It's like a complete water park. It was really fun. It was like 80 degrees there, Mike. And then I came back here. It was snowing and 20 degrees.
Explore Fuego is a water park?
It's like something like that.
Isn't Fuego meaning like on fire?
Well, there was fire. You would zip line through rings of fire.
What?
Yeah.
I love that. Cool.
I didn't get photos because they cost $100.
Oh, fair.
Yeah.
If you did get that photo though, you needed to like create as much value for it as possible. So like
just put it everywhere.
I would put it over your face just the entire episode this time. Like there would be no face cam for you.
Just me on a zip line like I'm flying.
Yeah.
It was
sure.
really fun. Oh, I got a pamphlet.
Ooh.
This is why you guys should watch the video version on our YouTube as well.
There you go.
So that you could see a ring of fire. Even though my lighting is murdering.
That is a ring of fire indeed. I saw Obama, so that was fun.
Thanks, Obama.
I got to walk right up and be like, "Hey, thanks, Obama." No, I didn't.
I went to some.
Hand. Yeah, I went to some conference this past week, and an economic conference, and yada yada. It was interesting listening to him talk. There were a lot of like light jabs at the current administration, but it was very funny. Just to hear him talk like that.
Yeah, he's a really good talker.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just listening to that guy talk. I miss when we could hear good talk. So we're not talking about the current presidency. What we are talking about is Pokemon, specifically VGC. Because, oh boy, guys, last week, again, for any of those, yeah, you really did. Bad vacation time. For those of you guys who were away last week, we had a moment where we were like, oh, and Mike's going to say in the chat, if there was anything super important that happened this past week. And in all caps, I typed Dallas Regionals.
Oops.
So we're going to be talking about that today. And actually, we have a special surprise for you guys after the break. Something that's new for Pokesports Podcast. Something that we're very excited about. But before that, let's get into some news. Let's get through our stuff before we get to the break. In the news this week, first thing, where is my thing? Oh, there we go. There it is. First thing this week, we're talking about VGC Worlds. Worlds information, Worlds details have all been dropped. We'll be in London, England on August 14th to 17th at Excel London.
3 whole days. Wow.
Yeah. I have a couple friends who have already been like, all right, well, I guess I'm taking a vacation to London this year.
Oh.
Usually they'll just do like a road trip to somewhere in the US. But this time with it being in the EU, they're like, okay, well, guess we're going overseas.
Yeah, it was in DC for like the last couple of years. So it's nice that it's going somewhere else, as much as I love it being so close to home. But like, it's the excuse to travel is always nice.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a worldwide competition, so might as well, explore different places. It's super interesting too, because I was curious if they were even going to have Worlds in August this year. I had thought that because of the expansion pass that they would actually opt to move Worlds, just
Mm,
because there's going to be this is going to be only like 2 months after Isle of Armor comes out.
yeah,
So is that going to be legal? Probably not.
probably
But
not. Yeah.
but is that a good thing? Because then suddenly like people are experimenting with all these new Pokemon 2 months before Worlds, but then they're limited to what they can use when Worlds actually happens. Like I feel like there's going to be
hmm
a lot of policing done by the professors at
You,
Worlds.
you see, I think it's a good thing for the competitors, but not so good thing for the viewers because the viewers are gonna want to look at
Yeah.
new Pokemon on the screen, but the competitors they don't want to make big changes last minute. They want to
Right.
go in with what they're knowledgeable about. They don't want the sleeper Pokemon to come out of the woodworks and completely disrupt the meta that they know because then they're caught off guard, they lose games, and then you miss your chance.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's Worlds. Let's move on to Smogon. In Smogon, Arena Trap has dug its way back into Ubers. Arena Trap is, of course, the ability that once you're using a Pokemon with Arena Trap, the opponent cannot switch out. If you've been on the Discord this week, we were talking about why this is important and why this is something that kind of needed to happen. Um, Arena Trap is just it's so unbelievably broken in
mm-hmm.
in the OU metagame. You send out Doug Trio and it's a revenge killer for almost any for a large handful of Pokemon at least. With
Yeah.
one specific move set, it has the ability to use a 100 power move, a 100 power stab move, I should say, a 200 power fighting move, or a priority dark move. Um, and then its other one, if it's holding focus, actually lowers your defense by 2 stages, and they can't switch
Jeez.
out. So if you swap that
Yeah.
Doug Trio in to any Pokemon that just knocked out your Pokemon, you basically have a Pokemon that can just wreck. Then you switch that out because you have the ability to switch out because Arena Trap is just like that. Um, and suddenly you have this Pokemon in your pocket that you can switch back into and is just a really speedy and attack heavy Pokemon for later. Like,
Yeah. We can agree on that it's pretty much just a free kill,
yeah,
essentially. For the most
absolutely.
part, unless you're going against a straight tank, it's a free kill.
Hmm.
Uh typically Smogon doesn't like Pokemon like that because if you have a Pokemon that's that oppressive that you can just remove one enemy Pokemon for free, it kind of messes up the rest of the game following
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You
But
can
you know
still
what's
use it in
funny?
Battle Tower, so
Oh
have
yeah,
fun.
you got that. But you know what's funny?
Mm.
This essentially means that Diglett went from LC to Ubers. He went from the lowest tier to
Oh
the
my
highest.
gosh, that is so
Respect for
true.
my little boy Diglett.
That is so true.
Oh,
Um,
that's funny.
so that's in Smogon.
Yeah.
The next thing that we're going to talk about, we're going to get into an announcement. As you guys know, it is the last uh, Pokesports episode of the month before next week into
Yeah.
February, which means that we are having our second Pokemon Spotlight giveaway. Now, for those of you who have been paying attention, you know that we have already talked about Obstagoon, we've talked about Dragapult, we've talked about Banalux, and all of their sets. Remember the way that the Pokesports giveaway works. Streamlabs coming in clutch with, oh, I say Twitch chilling. There you go. Um,
Hey.
the way that Pokesports giveaways work is all the Pokesports spotlights that we do during the month, we give away at the end of the month. There is a Gleam link that has just been added to the Twitch chat. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can always check that out on our Instagram or our Twitter. We pin that giveaway post. But there is a fourth Pokemon for this month that, if you're looking at the video version right now, you see right in front of you. So, massive spoiler
Mm.
alert, it's Charizard. We're going to be talking about Gmax
Hey.
Charizard today.
Mm-hmm. Who did very well in Dallas Regionals, which is why we're talking about it.
Oh my gosh.
It
Yeah,
won the
we're
whole
going to
thing.
get into
Yeah.
that. We're going to get into that. So there are lots of ways to win. If you go to the Gleam, you'll notice that all it takes is a visit to Spotify, a visit to YouTube, maybe a follow on Instagram, follow on Twitch if you if you're so inclined, as well as visiting our Patreon. Today, we have, and I'll just say it right up at the top, we have a special guest coming in. And I think I already said that. So coming in right after the break. So we are going to have our spotlight on Charizard just before the break. So that's coming up pretty soon. With that said, let's get into today's topic.
Dallas Regionals.
Dallas Regionals.
Mike's sick.
I'm sorry. Dallas Regionals happened last Saturday and Sunday. We're going to break down how regionals and all of that stuff, regionals and premier challenges. There was a lot of premier challenges actually that happened this week. One in Mississippi, I believe.
There was a couple today too. There was one in Florida.
There you go. We'll break down how Play Pokemon works in another episode. But what you do need to know is that regionals happen typically every month. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a month, all over the US and Canada. Kevin, you take over for a second. I need to go cough out a lung.
So pretty much regionals are just a lot of VGC competitors get together and they play Pokemon in different rounds, like Swiss rounds. In this past regional, what makes it such a big deal is that this is the most Masters players that have ever competed in a singular tournament in the history of Pokemon, which is a really big deal. But, obviously there's a prize pool. I think the total prize pool was 11,000 USD.
Which, by the way, is approximately 481,000 Canadian dollars.
Jesus.
Yeah, rounding up.
Thanks, Canada.
Thanks, Canada.
But the first place only wins 3,000 of those 11,000. How's your lung? Is it back?
I am losing my entire life. Oh, there we go. Perfect. It looks like I'm back. The winner was of this tournament was TBF Unreality, otherwise known as Aaron Traylor, who won about $3,000 USD. So that's about what you're looking at if you're going to a regionals with that many people.
Mike, breathe. The runner-up was Ayoto BJ. I'm gonna butcher his name. I'm gonna call him Bing Wang. The cool thing about the team that Traylor won with is that he won with Giganta Max Charizard, which is a Pokemon that me and Mike didn't think was going to be like super used because the solar power ability isn't allowed. You can only use the blaze ability. So just a quick highlight of his team. We're gonna get into a few of his sets later on, but quick highlight: you have Charizard, his Gigantamax with Whimsicott, which was his Sunny Day user, Conkeldurr, Durlodon, Jellicent, and Togekiss.
Whimsicott was a Sunny Day user?
Yeah, I believe so.
Interesting.
Or, I mean, Charizard can also self-set it if he has to.
Yeah, but that's not with Prankster. So interesting that the Whimsicott can come out and do that. I didn't actually know that it can use Sunny Day. I don't see that a lot.
Yeah, and the thing with Battle Stadium, which is kind of a little scummy right now, is that you can still bring Solar Power Charizard as a Gigantamax to Battle Stadium, but you can't bring it to official tournaments. Right. Which it's kind of annoying, but it is important to note that you
just can't do that right now. And even when Home comes out, you will be able to bring a Solar Power Charizard in, but I believe that it will not be able to Gigantamax. So there's that.
But yeah, all in all, his team is pretty straightforward. He doesn't have any super out there Pokemon. You didn't see any. There's no Pokemon here that we haven't seen before. Charizard's just the coolest one out of the bunch,
right?
I'd say.
But what makes the difference with his team actually is that he specifically EV trained so many of these Pokemon to match up against like very specific other Pokemon. And this is telling of a person who is like very, very familiar with the meta, very, very familiar with what certain Pokemon can do, and really like maximizing the potential of all of these Pokemon. What we're going to do is I'm actually going to break down, just give an example about his Conkeldurr. So what Aaron did is he actually went on Medium, I think, and he made a report about all the Pokemon that he used and why he used them and the teams that he went up against, and he just gave like a full report of the entire weekend, which was amazing
Yeah.
for
He went
nerds like me.
he went in depth. Like that was a long report, and if you guys want it, we'll link it down below in the description because it goes very in depth.
Absolutely. But funny enough, he actually made that during the week that the numbers episode came out. So that was like, yes, there are people who are, really taking this to heart, and not exactly what we said per se, but people who are focusing on the numbers and really showing that, if you really drill down on some of these concepts, then you can win tournaments and you can do really well. So let's look at this Conkeldurr, right? He gave his Conkeldurr an Assault Vest, but he only provided 100 special defense EVs. And the reason that happened is because that specifically lives one Choice Specs Pixelate Hyper Voice from a Sylveon. Wow. Typically, Sylveons are seen often in the meta, and Conkeldurrs don't want to deal with those very often. So with a fully special attack invested Sylveon using a Hyper Voice, which is its staple move, it's guaranteed to live at least one.
And that's very useful because situations to where you can safely bring in a Conkeldurr even against the Sylveon is really useful, because Conkeldurr, the why Conkeldurr is so good is because since it has 140 base attack, it doesn't need a lot of attack investment,
right,
in order to OHKO threats like Excadrill and threats like Tyranitar with just the Mach Punch. It's ridiculous. And because you do have the Guts ability, you can easily come in and absorb Will-O-Wisp from any opponent ghost type Pokemon that have Will-O-Wisp. And it's all around just very good coverage moves. Absolutely. You can go for Drain Punch. You even have Poison Jab to go against a Sylveon or against a Togekiss. I don't think his Conkeldurr was actually interesting. It ran 3 fighting moves.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. He had Drain Punch. I think it was Drain Punch, Close Combat, I guess, just Punch, when he wanted to ensure KO, and Mach Punch.
Well, that's the thing. Close Combat is the only move that's a guaranteed one-hit KO versus Tyranitar specifically.
When you Dynamax, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It can OHKO a Dynamax Tyranitar.
100% of the time. Yeah, that's I guess why. And if he's going to get burnt, then
you've got the Guts.
Well, yeah. Did he have the Guts? I think
he did. That's right.
Yeah. If he's going to get burnt, then having Drain Punch is also still very good, because you're able to stay on the field longer, because you're going to keep losing health every turn. So the Drain Punch kind of nullifies that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So that's Conkeldurr. Again, like his team, 3 of his Pokemon were like that, right? He had Jellicent, I believe, Togekiss, his Conkeldurr. They were all EV spec, like for very certain, very, very specific interactions. His Charizard, his Whimsicott, and Duraludon, though, they were very blanket users. So like
straightforward.
The only thing exactly, straightforward. The only thing that you're using Charizard for anyway is for its special attack and its speed. So that's all he invested into. But Conkeldurr is what you use when you're really trying to get around certain moves and, all that good stuff. But with all that said, our Pokemon Pokesports Spotlight number 4, and going to be on our giveaway for this month, is Giganta Max Charizardio. Specifically, Aaron Traylor's Giganta Max Charizardio.
I was gonna say the very interesting thing here that he ran is actually Chardy Berry over Life Orb, because most people, when they use Charizard, they just run Life Orb and then just do as much damage as possible. But he actually valued living more than dealing damage. But on a D-Max regular Charizard, I understand Life Orb would probably be better. But in this specific case, I didn't realize how much damage a G-Max what's his Wildfire does. I didn't realize how much residual damage it does. It does almost 25% of their health if they're weak to it. It's
Mhm.
kind of scary. So I was just like, oh, wow. Yeah, you really don't need to do damage. You just need to survive till the end of the turn, and then the move will do the damage for you every turn afterwards.
That's right. I mean, think about this. Some of the attacks that Dynamax or Gmax Charizard survives with Chardy Berry include Excadrill's Max Rockfall, includes Mudsdale's Max Rockfall, includes any Rock Slide from any Pokemon, even if they were using Helping Hand and Life Orb. These were all things that came off of the report that Aaron gave, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but all in all, I think Blast Burn was a little bit unique too. But I'm pretty sure that's there just to do as much damage. Because I think there was never going to be a situation where he wasn't going to Gmax his Charizard. Or if there was a situation, it was very rare. Yeah. So Blast Burn, just there to do as much damage as possible. Solar Beam to do as much damage as possible and to hit grass types.
Air Slash as the max move.
Yeah, these are all just max moves.
Yeah. Well, actually, however, Solar Beam with the Sunny Day Up is a one-turn move. So if you are going to run a Whimsicott with Sunny Day or anything with Sunny Day along with this, then that Solar Beam is going to be that much better.
Yeah.
Of course, then we've got Air Slash for exactly for the max move as well. Alternatively, if you want to play a more typical Charizard, again, the EV spread stays the same, the ability stays the same because that's the only thing you can use. But you can use Heat Wave, Overheat, Hurricane, Dragon Pulse. Those are all typical moves that you'll see on a Gmax Charizard. But I will say, if you're going to use that, definitely consider switching out the Chardy Berry for a Life Orb. Because those moves do need a little bit of boost in power.
I think that's why he went for Blast Burn instead, because he valued surviving more than he valued dealing damage. Right. He wanted to still compensate for that lack of damage that he was having, because it's a big difference from Heat Wave to Blast Burn.
Yeah,
like Blast Burn is like 150. Heat Wave, I think, is only 130 if it's maxed. So.
As well, another reason that he used the Whimsicott is Fake Tears is an incredible move to use alongside this Pokemon here, right? You use Fake Tears, you lower their special defense by 2 stages, you have priority in doing that, and then suddenly you're doing double damage with all of your super high-powered moves.
And a lot of his team is actually special, too. I think the only Pokemon on his team that's physical is his Conkeldurr. So that Fake Tears just really did him wonders, I'm sure.
Exactly. All right. And with that is our 4th and final Pokemon Pokesports spotlight for the month. That will be in the Gleam giveaway. If you just type !giveaway in the chat, you can see all the information about that. With that, we are going to take a little break. I'm going to finally get some water because my throat is just not.
Mike has Volcoronavirus.
Oh no! Too soon.
I made the joke.
You did it. So we'll be back. We'll have our guest in just a few minutes. Enjoy this break. And we are back. Welcome back, everybody. And for all of those who are in the chat right now, feel free to type because we have a very special screen for you today where you're going to be able to see everything there. Our special guest today is Professor Joey VG on Twitter. He is a Pokemon professor who was actually one of the Pokemon professors at Dallas Regionals. Joey, how are you?
Pretty good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
No problem.
Absolutely. Joey, tell us a little bit about what a Pokemon professor does.
So a Pokemon professor is somebody who really loves Pokemon enough to where they want to organize and create events for their local community. So, you get a lot of people that start out as players and they'll attend leagues, they'll attend tournaments. And then, there might be a need. There might be a store that might want to start hosting a Pokemon League, or there might be a player who just wants to start hosting tournaments. And so there is an avenue for people who love Pokemon to become what's called a professor. And so you apply with the Pokemon company, you take a test, you do a background check, and a few weeks or a couple months later, you end up getting a little, how should I put this, a page that's accessible to you in your Pokemon Trainer Club account where you can start creating tournaments and start creating leagues. And that's how you become a professor.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, I've always wondered like what you have to do to get to that point. But okay,
Mhm.
now everything makes sense.
Yeah.
How long did you say that whole process takes?
It depends. It kind of depends on the workload of organized play with the Pokemon Company. My application took about 2 months.
Mm.
After I took the test, I got a request for a background check. The background check came in, and about maybe a month after that, I had uh, just got a notice that said, "Hey, you're in the program. Congrats!" And
There you
I've
go.
seen other people where it takes like 2 weeks. I've seen
Hmm.
some folks where it takes a little longer. So it kind of just depends. But the Pokemon Company does act pretty quickly to get people sanctioned and ready to go to start hosting tournaments.
Interesting. So, what specifically made you decide to be a Pokemon professor?
I really enjoy bringing people together.
Oh.
And
Oh, that's good.
then as I've said a couple times, I really love Pokemon,
Hmm.
and I started. Um, I had taken probably about a good maybe 10-year break from
Oh.
actively playing Pokemon, actively
Hmm.
playing all the games, and I rejoined at the end of 2015. And I this was before Sun and Moon came out, so I got X and Y, and then I got Aurus, and
Hmm.
I I it I noticed that there really wasn't, like, a scene for VG specifically in San Antonio. There was a scene for
Mm.
TCG, but there wasn't that much for video game players to come out
Hmm.
to. And so I started meeting up with a few friends, at a local game store called Dragon's Lair, and, the first day we met up, it was me and 2 of my high school friends and somebody who just happened to hear that we were meeting, and so there were 4 of us that first day in, like, 2016. Um or maybe actually that was 2017 at that point, excuse me. And
Mm.
slowly we started growing. And now we
Cool.
probably get anywhere from about 10 to 20 people for our regular Sunday meetups that we have. So one of the one
That's
of
not
my
bad at
goals,
all.
yeah. So my one of my goals is to make to have an active VG and TCG community here in San Antonio. And there are a lot of other professors here in San Antonio that do TCG. Right now, there's only one other that does VG.
Interesting.
That yeah, that's something really interesting because I used to go to a lot of like VG competitions back in like 2014, 2015, and I know that there were a lot of people when I was uploading videos and saying, "Oh, I'm going to be heading to this tournament. If you guys are going, I'm going on this day. You can meet up with me." There were a lot of people that are like, "I wish I can go to VGC tournaments, but they're just none in my area, or they
Mm.
just live in like low populated areas that there isn't a VGC presence and they have to travel far to get to that presence." So
Right.
it's great that, more people are applying to become Pokemon professors and then, just spread that out like you did with San Antonio.
Yeah, I
Well,
like that
Hmm.
a lot.
Hmm.
So you said that you've been playing a little bit more intensely since X and Y. About how much time would you say you actually spend playing the game? Is most of your time done at these meetups and tournaments, or do you play like a lot in your downtime as well?
it really just depends on the week. I'm in my early 30s, and so there's not as much time to play video
For
games
sure.
as I had about 10 years ago. So I want to say that I try to get in at least a good maybe 6 hours of playing the game like uninterrupted a week.
Mm.
And then at our VG meetup, I'll play for like 5 hours straight, and we'll do different max raids and just different like this is going to sound so silly, but one of the things I really love is making curry.
Ah,
And so I'll try to get other folks just because it's fun.
yeah.
It's I guess it's kind of cute to see a bunch of people waving their Joy Cons or swirling their Joy Cons around, and it gets attention from folks out there.
It's amazing. That's cool. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Maybe I have to start making some more curry in my downtime. I'm pretty sure I've made one dish, and that was the tutorial dish.
It's one of the
uh,
more fun things you can do with people in a local setting. I like that a
yeah,
lot.
for
Well,
sure.
and
Do
and if
you?
I
Yeah.
if I can add, one of the things that I really love about Sword and Shield is it's a much bigger community game.
Mm,
Yes.
Sun and Moon were great in the sense that you could have 4 people in one battle with
mhm.
battle royales, but Sword and Shield actually lets you feel like you're exploring the wild area with like a
Yes.
group of people. Because when you
Mhm.
go online, you just see these almost literally dozens of people running around on their bikes. If you go by the daycare center, you'll see people running around in circles, like trying to hatch eggs. But
Yeah.
when you're in a local setting, like when you're just on local wireless, at a game store with maybe 10 or 12 people around you, you'll actually be able to see, up to 4 or 5 of them in the game with you. And so,
Right.
if you wanted
Oh
to, you
wow.
could
Yeah.
run up to certain raid dens, or we even tried to take like a group picture in the game.
Yeah.
Um, but the game only lets you have like 4 or 5 people in there
Mhm.
at a time, like you can see when you're on local. And
Right.
the fact that you can that you can kind of have that experience and have multi battles, and it's a much more inviting game, especially
Mhm.
when you're playing with such a big group of people, because there are folks that'll walk in and they'll see like, oh, what are y'all playing? Oh, I play Pokemon. Hang on, I have my Switch in the car. Let me go get it. And that's
There it
happened a
is.
lot of times.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Yeah.
and and you can actually have a TV in the game store now where people can see what you're doing, instead of having the 3DS where it's I don't want to use the word isolated, but it's
Yeah.
very individual where everybody's looking at their screen. Here with it being on the Switch, you can actually have it on a television for a lot of people to see.
Well,
Mhm.
that's something that we mentioned a couple weeks back as well, is just the addition of um, the battle viewer was just such a powerful tool
Oh
in
yeah.
everything now that's competitive in the Pokemon space. I love it.
That thing
I
looks so clean. Yeah.
I
Hmm.
could go on and on and on about it. The spectator mode that is included
Spectator
Yeah.
mode,
within
yes.
live competition is so good. This is what I think Pokemon needed to make it a much bigger esport,
Hundred
because
percent.
it lets the spectator come into the game, whereas with Pokemon on the 3DS, you could really only get the legit streams at major events like
Yes.
internets, at
Yeah.
worlds, at regionals. The local events didn't really have the capability to do that unless you were using third party software or modded systems, which the
Right.
Pokemon Company really, really, really frowns upon.
Right.
Mhm.
Um, and so now you actually have this ability to not only just play it within the store, you can play it using you can stream it, which is something that I'm trying to do with the other professors that I work with in the league here in San Antonio, and the other leagues in Texas, is trying to
Yeah.
get uh a stream that's pretty consistent that people can watch, because it makes it
Mhm.
all that more inviting, and you get more people involved and the game grows.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the first time I'd actually experienced that spectator mode was in the Dallas Regional stream. And so I think that's a good opportunity for us to kind of pivot into the Dallas Regionals. So Dallas
Sure.
Regionals 500, and what it was the official number, 575 VGC players?
About well, so um I kind of want to take you through just the massive growth that we saw. Now, first, let me say that I was a judge within the VGC portion. I'm
Mhm.
not in the top brass
Mm,
of the Dallas Regionals the organizing of it. That's done
sure.
by a woman named Christine, who puts on a fantastic event every year. She is
Mhm.
the organizer for the regionals, and it takes a big team. I'll probably tweet out the staff photo of how many people it took on staff to put this event together. It's a
Hmm.
lot.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I can imagine.
and we have a Facebook page for staff members, and we were counting just how many VG players that it was growing. I don't know. I can't
Yeah,
remember how many people it was before we started seeing this exponential shift. And literally exponential is the way to describe it,
for
because they
sure.
were adding, like in the days before, about 20 players per day. and that is for VG. That's a lot.
For sure.
Ultimately, we had to cut it off because there wasn't enough space in the room to accommodate more players. We got
That's surprising.
It was
Oh, so there could have been more.
There could have been more, but like one of the reasons that it was cut off was just
Yeah.
because of space, and
Right.
So that's crazy.
And we ended up with a total of 607 people registered to play.
Oh, wow.
That
Jeez.
is I have been told that Atlanta, I believe in 2016, may have had more than that. I haven't checked to look and see if it's possible to check that. Seated on the day of the tournament on Saturday, seated, we probably had in the range of 580 players, because there are some folks that register and they can't end up making the tournament. So it is one of, if not the largest VGC seating that has ever happened.
That's incredibly exciting. Oh my goodness, that is incredibly exciting.
And
it was really cool.
And the fact that there could have been more people, it was just capped because of occupancy.
Right.
So there was more interest. That's crazy.
And there were people showing up the day of that wanted to try, but the folks that had pre-registered, they were guaranteed those seats. It's just some folks, for whatever reason, just ended up not being able to make it. Maybe delayed flights or what have you. But those folks that that seat was theirs, and they technically could have been seated within before round 2 started, according to the rules. So, even though there were people there day of that wanted to register, because it was capped, they had to kind of have that space available to that player if they ended up being able to show up.
So speaking of the rounds, what kind of things did you have to adapt to or change because of that such a large scale? I know on day 1 there were like 10 rounds. If I
yes,
yeah,
yes.
Those were those all best of 1s or best of 3s?
They were best of 3s.
Nice.
So
that's 30 battles.
Up to 30 battles.
Let me tell you about oh man. So it's pretty typical maybe to have 7 rounds, 8 rounds of VGC. Certain regionals in the past, like 2019's Dallas regionals had under 200 players for VG.
Wow.
I can't remember the exact number of rounds, but we finished before TCG last year. This year, TCG finished before VG did. In fact, So in fact, just before round 10 started, all of the TCG judges came into the VGC room and said, "Hey, we're done." And so, we had this like moment of pride where VGC was lasting longer than TCG, which was pretty cool. I can't remember the exact time that we finished round 10, but I want to guess it was sometime between like 7:30 and 9 when we started round 1 around 9 in the morning. So it was about a 12-hour day for players. Judges, we get there starting at about 7 o'clock to make sure everything is set up.
That's a 14-hour day, 15.
It went a little longer than for us afterwards too.
Wow.
And this time we had a setup that we've never had to use before. We had stands, we had Ethernet cables, we had the charging cables, whereas before you would just have to bring your 3DS, sit down and play. And some regionals would have chargings at each seat, but this time we had to have the actual LAN setups, which we set up on Thursday night and Friday night. We had set up 600 of those individual setups for each seat. And it is an excellent system. It takes some time to put together, but it is absolutely worth it because you have a hardwired connection and you have constant power. So you don't have to worry about charging your Switch between matches.
Yeah.
There's no the risk of like losing power in a match is I can't say zero, but virtually zero.
Right.
Or your Switch dying in the middle of a match. Um, so it's a really really good system to use now for tournament setup.
Mm-hmm.
That's such an incredible like improvement to the 3DS, because I just remember when the regionals that I've attended, you just see like the whole floor scattered with power surges and just a bunch of people trying to
Power
charge their
bars, yeah.
DSs charge their DSs at the same time just to make sure they don't die during their match. But yeah, I was looking at the way that some of these switches are organized are
Set up.
placed. Yeah,
Mhm.
they're like at a tilt. I saw some people just playing with their pro controllers. It was so chill.
There was one player. There was one player who actually brought a licensed arcade fighting stick
Yeah.
to play, and it's licensed, it's wired, and it was legal to use. So he was
Oh,
able to play
jeez.
it with this big arcade setup in his lap.
That's amazing. Do you think more people are going to start using that now that they know that there is a legal one out there?
I would say that I wouldn't want to travel with one because
Fair.
it was big. It's legal for players to use, and until the Pokemon Company decides to maybe change those rules, it's there. It can
Mhm.
be used.
Uh-huh.
That kind of
Uh,
reminds me of like the guy in college that rides a unicycle to class. Like he was the one with an arcade setup while everyone else has pro controllers.
But that
That's
person is
funny.
the coolest kid in that entire school.
Exactly. We're talking about him on this
By
podcast.
far, by far, by far. So I want to move on to talking about the age groups there. The vast majority of the VGC players at Dallas Regionals, and I assume it's going to be pretty constant through all of the other regionals, because it's like this in VGC and TCG, were masters, which, for those of you who don't know, are anybody who's 16 plus. Within Play Pokemon, you have juniors, seniors, and masters. Juniors are the little guys, seniors are the guys in between, and the masters, again, 16 plus. What do you think that says about competitive Pokemon as an esport? Because typically esports are centered and aimed for people of that 16 plus demographic. So to see this within Pokemon, it's like, to me anyway, it feels like, we're making some big important steps, and I kind of wanted to get your view on that.
well, when it comes to Pokemon, it's as long as I've been a judge, it's always been the case that there are way more Masters players
Mm-hmm.
than there are juniors and seniors, and this is my opinion, this is my observation. But the reason that you see that at a regionals level is a regionals can be pretty costly for players. I
True.
don't want to say it's because registration can be anywhere between $45 and $65. So a
Mhm.
junior and a senior is typically going to have to depend on their parents to be able to pay something like
Right.
that. Whereas masters, they have much more disposable income. For larger tournaments, I think you'll typically see more masters at these big tournaments. And even at my locals, there have been there's always been more masters. I have started getting a
Mm.
few seniors within VG, and occasionally maybe one or two juniors. But to kind of answer your question, I think it was about the esport, correct? Can you
Mhm.
refresh me of your question one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious what that feels like to you in terms of how Pokemon is progressing as an esport. Are we
Oh,
going to see it grow into more of a worldwide stage, more than it already has, or like what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's really going to depend on the players. So one of the reasons that Pokemon is so prevalent across age groups is that people like I'm gonna guess you guys are in your 20s, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Late 20s, yeah.
for people like in our age range in late 20s, early 30s, Pokemon was a big part of our lives
Absolutely.
growing up. It was absolutely
Mhm.
huge for me. and there's a very big nostalgic sense going back and playing this or continuing something. And even for parents, I've seen parents with their kids, you know, they love Pokemon and now their kids love Pokemon. So it becomes a very big family affair for them.
Mhm.
So and especially with things like Pokemon Go, because it was in 2016 that we saw this big Pokemon renaissance and resurgence come back after it
Mm-hmm.
became so readily available for
Mhm.
people. And I think
To
that triggered a lot of folks to come back into the game.
to a much more
Um,
casual audience,
For
yeah.
sure.
oh yeah. Oh
They
yeah, for
kind of had
sure.
like the resurgence. Oh, Pokemon's still around? Let's play this.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
when people sing that, they might pull out their old systems or they might see what Pokemon and games are available then. I had rekindled my interest before Pokemon Go. I don't want to say rekindled because I've always loved it, but I started heavily playing again
Mhm.
a few months before Pokemon Go had come out, and I think now you'll see kind of that wave happen again with the younger audiences, because kids love their Switches. Kids love Pokemon, and
Yeah.
it'll carry over then into the next generation. So, as far as Pokemon being an esport, that, as I mentioned, is really, I think, going to depend on how much time and investment current players put into it and how many more want to get into VGC,
Mhm.
or even more into TCG, because there are players within the leagues here in San Antonio that are switching. Like they've been playing TCG for a number of years, and I
Yeah.
know of at least four right now who have decided to stop playing TCG and go into VG.
Mhm.
So it's happening, and other professors that I was speaking with at Dallas have said the same thing is happening with them. That people are getting a bigger interest in 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 VGC now. So, um, how VGC grows from here is really going to depend on the interest of people and how much
How well that
people
can be
want.
held.
Yeah, and how much they wanna get
Yeah.
into the game, because it's a lot
Absolutely.
easier to team build now than it's ever been before.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's more accessible
It's
this
so
generation for
much more
sure.
accessible, yeah. And I mean it's even I would hazard to say more fun with things like max raids and all of the other ways that you can kind of get Pokemon and Pokejobs for the EVs as well.
Right.
I think the game kind of makes it part of the experience to get your Pokemon to be battle ready and I feel like a lot of people can really capitalize on that.
I
Um,
think
mhm,
I think it's pretty safe to say if we see anything like what we saw in Dallas in the next regionals and the following regionals, then it's on the right path to becoming a more solidified esport for sure.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
I The next regionals, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the next one is gonna be Collinsville, and
Mhm.
that one is a very, very popular regionals. Collinsville, for those who don't know, is a suburb of St. Louis,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
the organizers that run Collinsville are great people. They run 4 regionals, throughout, I think, there's 3 in the US and they run 1 in Canada,
Yep.
and they are a fantastic duo. Yeti Gaming is the name of the company, and they
Oh,
are
sorry.
very, very, very cool, um, and I feel very confident that Collinsville is going to be very highly attended as well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the sky's really the limit as far as how far VGC can go. Just because there's like this interest right now is growing so much that
Mhm.
it's very exciting to watch.
I'm gonna make sure to keep the name Yeti Gaming in mind. We are going actually to the Canadian regionals that's coming in March.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
that's gonna be quite interesting as well.
Do
Yeah.
you,
So
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna ask, do you still participate, or do you mainly just like to be a professor when it
Um,
comes to regionals?
Do you have time?
It
Yeah.
organizing events takes a lot of time. And if
Hmm.
I can kind of backtrack earlier, there was a lot of help with getting, like, to me, learning everything about it is to
Hmm.
become a professor. My friend Cody was a very, very, very big help in because he was able to hold VGC events in San Antonio before I was.
Mm.
And so he was the VGC professor and still is. He's kind of taking a little bit of a break right now, but I owe like a lot to Cody who had the VGC scene here and was helping it build up with hosting locals.
Mm.
As far as like me being a player, at first I played in tournaments a lot more.
Mhm.
But organizing takes up a fair amount of time. I'm not an employee of the store that I organize stuff at, but it's almost kind of become like a job slash hobby in
Mhm.
putting some of these events together. And there's a there's four other professors that that help run our league as well. I would
Mm.
just a big thanks to Mike, to David, to Dario, and to Nicole and Robert. I just want to say thank you to them for all the stuff that they do to put our league together here. But as far as like me playing, I don't really get to compete in the circuit as much as I would like to. I'm kind of a terrible player. I will admit that my team building skills are not that good. In fact, when some friends and I went to Internats in 2018, I had to borrow one of my friends, a couple of their Pokemon because my team wasn't ready yet.
Mm.
So I borrowed a Heatran and a couple of others from a good friend, and I think I went. What was my record for then? I think for Internets, I probably went 2-7. So I'm not
Okay.
exactly the.
Hey,
I'm
you know
not
what?
exactly
No
the
judgment.
tooling.
Because you know what? You know what? I just went to a TCG pre-release, and I'm very much like a novice in TCG. I'm just trying to get into it. First pre-release ever yesterday. We had a bunch of small best of ones, and I went, of the 9 games that we played, I went 3-6. So I have no judgment towards somebody who's into the game. I wanted to, and for those of you who are just joining us now, we're speaking with Professor Joey, a Pokemon professor from Dallas, the Dallas Regionals, or who participated in Dallas Regionals from San Antonio.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you 2 more quick questions. I'm curious about what the most common thing you're asked as a professor, because again, for those of you who have never been to an actual regionals or event, quite often the participants will put their hands up and ask the professors to come over and answer something for them so that, they can clarify that the game's being played fairly and that everything is copacetic. So what is the most common thing you're asked?
So like for a judge's call or just like in general?
Let's go both.
Okay. In general, where are the team sheets? Because I'm joking. I usually make sure that I have a good supply of team sheets for all of the premier events. For in Dallas, the number one judge call that we had initially gotten was somebody not at their opponent not being there. So when a round starts, one of the first things you have to do is, for everybody that has their hand up, you have to go and mark their opponent as late because they were not seated when the round had started. And so if you're doing best of 1, if they're not there in 5 minutes, the player that is seated wins. If you're doing best of 3, after 5 minutes, they win game 1. Then after 10 minutes, they win game 2. And so then that player will win the round. So that's number one. One
Did
of
that
the
happen
others.
a lot?
Well, I mean, it's pretty typical. I mean, it's not at a locals. It doesn't happen very often. At a regionals, somebody might just forget. Oh, I have to drop. So in some rounds, somebody might just not show up. So that's it's possible, and it happens, and it's pretty regular.
Yeah.
There was, and I can't really talk about like individual rulings and things, but there was one instance when a match had ended. It had gone to time, and one of the really interesting things about the new format is there is no more round time for VGC. It used to be 50 minutes, and then whatever game you're on after 50 minutes, it would be plus 3 turns. But that doesn't happen anymore, because each game in the round is set to 15 minutes. You just let them go to their natural end. And so I had one round then that had it was game 3, and there were they had one Pokemon each, and the game had ended. It had run out of time, and it declared one person the winner. And so we had to go backtrack and see, like, okay, why was that person the winner? Now, with VG, the game is going to declare what happens, because there's so many different variables. There could be, did Sandstorm knock them out, or did they get knocked out because of a burn? And so we have to defer to the game to actually make that decision. And if it ends up becoming a draw, then there's mechanisms in place to figure out what the next steps are, whether that be sudden death. So that was one instance that I had to kind of just like, okay, well, this is why this person, and another judge, the head judge, came over to help and kind of say, yeah, then that's exactly what was supposed to happen. And some other, there are people that will have like maybe team sheet questions,
just administrative questions like that.
And one of the things that happened with the 3DS, and it doesn't really happen with the Switch now, were game freezes. And those are always interesting to deal with, because there is a mechanism in place that if something happened to the infrared port on the 3DS, and your connection was interrupted and you couldn't get the connection back. Well, if you were so far into a game, you would have to determine who wins that game based on the number of remaining Pokemon. So I forget the exact rubric, because it's spelled out for us, and it's still there in case there are game freezes. But let's say both players had 2 Pokemon, then it would be a tie, and then they go on to like the next round or whichever. Then if, let's say, one player has 1 Pokemon left and one player has 4 Pokemon left, well, and in that round, then the player with 4 Pokemon remaining would be the winner in that case. So, that's one of the things that with VG, some of the calls that judges have to make. Whereas with TCG, there's so many different variables that a judge has to go over and be like, well, okay, do you get a 2-card prize penalty, or do you get a quad card prize penalty?
Right.
I'm not very familiar with the terms in TCG, unfortunately, but it's with video game. That's some of the calls that we get, and I realize that was a very long-winded answer to your question.
That was very informative. I'm really the most informative thing that I think I gathered from that was that there are situations where the game decides who the winner is, because it is that close to the wire. I'm so curious, and I'm going to be trying to do some research on how exactly the game goes about doing that, because I'm just a numbers nerd like that.
It probably happens with a lot of factors, right? Like there's some things like life orb damage that'll happen after recoil damage or something like that. Like a lot of things, like there's a priority to everything in Pokemon.
Yeah, and that's one of the things. So this is a hypothetical scenario, but let's say that you have a Mimikyu that has life orb on it, and maybe it has like 5 HP, and it decides to priority Shadow Sneak into an Arcanine that also only has 5 HP. Well, it knocks out is Arcanine normal type?
No,
I'm trying to remember.
You're correct. So it would knock out the Arcanine.
So Shadow Sneak would hit Arcanine and knock it out, but all of a sudden, bam, a Life Orb will take out the Mimikyu. Well, what happens? I actually don't have an answer for that, and the game would end up kind of deciding what to do there.
I think it's whichever faints first.
In that case, it is typically the one that faints first. But again, these are the strange priority orders that Pokemon uses. Everything with +7 to -7. I think fainting even is somewhere on the priority when you get deep into it. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
all right.
that is very deep into it.
For sure. And that's the level of deep that I like to get into Pokemon, because I am just a super fan like that. Joey, I want to thank you so much for coming on this podcast and enlightening us about what it's like to be a professor at a regional event. Is there any place where people can find you?
Well, I have a specific video game Twitter account, and it's Professor Joey VG. And the reason it only says VG is because I ran out of characters and couldn't fit C in there. So
right,
I just decided to go. Yeah,
we know what that feels like.
yeah. We like our long names.
So my Twitter is Professor Joey VG for all the stuff that I do. I have applied for a couple more for at least one more regional. So fingers crossed, I might be going to Utah, and there is in April a professor seminar that is strictly reserved like for professors.
Cool.
That's going to be happening in Denver. I went to the one last year in Atlanta. It's really cool. They have what's called a Professor Cup, where they had a Professor Cup at Dallas this year too, where I believe the prizing is usually a spot on the world staff or the internet staff. And they actually have Professor Cup trophies and stuff like that. So
I saw you got to round 5. I saw you got to round 5 for that one. I saw you got to round 5.
Yeah, I did until I had to go help out with the Premier Challenge. The sides events organizer Colton asked if I could to go help, and I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Sounds good.
So it's being a professor is fun, man. If you want to organize within your local community, now is a very, very, very good time to get involved.
Perfect.
Because we are in a new generation. We are on a new console. We are in a new TCG format. We are in a new VG format, and things, I believe, are only going to grow from here. So if somebody listening is a professor, or rather is a player that wants to start organizing in their community, you can go to I think if you just can Google Pokemon Professor program and then find it on there, it'll tell you all the way that what you have to do to apply. And it wouldn't hurt to have more VG professors out there, because when there are more local events, there's more local interest, and people are going to gravitate more to locals because they're much more accessible, much more attainable for people to attend, rather than the regionals. That's in no way meant to knock regionals or anything. It's just locals are just easier for people to attend. So
way more accessible.
So if there are people out there that want to become a professor, it's not a hard task. I recommend giving it a shot, because you can be a gaming leader in your community.
That's true. Absolutely. Get on that, people. If you have a passion for Pokemon and for Pokemon events and gathering a stronger community in your local area, head to a GameStop, or go to GameStop. Head to a game shop. Try and organize something locally. Go onto the internet, look up the Professor program, see what it takes to become one, and then do it, because that is what's going to promote this game into such a bigger thing than it already is.
And if I could add one more thing, I just want to state that I'm not an employee of the Pokemon Company. I am just a volunteer professor. That's just me trying to help people get more involved with organizing local Pokemon events, because it's a lot of fun. It's
absolutely,
there's maybe a little stress involved with it here and there, but it's really, really, really cool. And I just wanted to state, I am a volunteer. I don't work for the Pokemon Company. I just like to organize events. Yeah.
There you go. All right. That's a great part to end that on. We all know where we can find Professor Joey. Kevin, where can people find you?
Twitch, Twitter, YouTube at xRazeOvation.
And then, of course, you can find me on Instagram, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube at StillJustMike. You can find the podcast on Instagram at Pokesports Podcast, or on Twitter at Pokesports Pod. Special thanks to all of our patrons from this week. Tofu, love you, dude. Everybody there, Jamie, thank you very much. Love you. You can find that all at patreon.com/Pokesports podcast. Big thanks again to all of the people who are already enrolled in the Gleam giveaway, all 1,500 entries. You guys rock. Can't wait to see it next week when we give away some super cool Pokemon. Thanks everybody for having us in your ears for the past hour, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Later, guys. Bye-bye.